this is the splash page, excuse me, here it goes. Okay, so this is the splash page for Davinci Resolve. And this is Davinci Resolve 17. Davinci Resolve 17 was introduced last fall, and it introduced a lot of new features, a lot of great new features to the platform. And so the version that we're working on here, and if you've checked out a laptop, you would have the same version on it. So I'm going to go to the website. And so here's the web page. And that's at blackmagicdesign.com. So if you don't have Davinci Resolve already loaded on your system, this is where you find it. So this is the splash page. Now there are several pages when you go to the website. You may not see this right off. It might start off with a piece of gear, and to go to it, you can either go to products and select Davinci Resolve Infusion software, or you can, from the home page, you can start clicking, and there's, I think, 9 pages. You can just click through until you find the one that says Davinci Resolve, okay? So once you're on this page, it says free download now. Free is a very good price, especially for this software. So you just click that, and it'll take you to the Davinci Resolve product page. And you might see some familiar scenes on here. Davinci Resolve has been used in countless motion pictures and television post-production. You probably see the results of this package all the time in things you watch. So we will go down here, and here is the download now button. And we'll go to that. Now this screen is your download screen. You have some options on this. Now this is an earlier version of Resolve from last year. And so we're going to be concentrating on Davinci Resolve 17. So Davinci Resolve 17 is the free version of the software, and Davinci Resolve Studio is the paid version. Right now, the paid version price is about $295. That's $295. So it puts it up in the range of Final Cut Pro. And the nice thing is if you do purchase it, you get more advanced features than you find in the free version. And also there are free updates. So far, since I've had my paid version, I haven't had to pay for any updates, and it's had significant updates over the past several years since I first got it. The one nice thing is with the paid version is it comes bundled. So if you are in the market for a new camera and you happen to like any of the models of Blackmagic cameras, and you purchase one, Davinci Resolve Studio 17 comes bundled with the camera. So you get it for free, which is also a very good price. So back over to Davinci Resolve 17, the free version. We have 3 options depending on which platform you're on. There's a Mac version, Windows version, and even a Linux version, which is kind of unique to have a program available on the 3 main platforms. Quite often they're limited to only Mac or Windows, or both of these, and not available on Linux. So having it on Linux is also great. Also, there are 2 other versions I should mention that are in the Mac OS family. There is a version that's made for the new M1 processor. So there are new Macintoshes out that contain the M1 processor, which is split off from the Intel processors. They're no longer using, from that point on, the Intel processors. So this version is for Intel that you have here. And there, if you go to the support page, and I'll show that later, you can download the one specifically for the M1 processor. And also there is a version that's available in the Mac App Store, the Apple App Store. And that one is, you can, and that's the free version and the studio version are both available there. The one thing is, though, is that it may be missing a few certain features because it's so Mac-centric. It may not have some of the crossover options that some of the other versions have, like the studio version. If you buy it from the Mac App Store, Normally you get a license when you purchase the paid version. The license is good for 2 computers. So if you have say a desktop PC and a Mac laptop, you can have both versions running simultaneously on the same license.
So
Um,
Tony,
yes,
if I can clarify then, if you get it for free with a piece of equipment, you don't get 2 licenses, or you do?
you do. Yes,
Excellent. I'm doing math right now for all
yes.
the computers we have. Thank you.
Okay, yeah, because it's great if you get if you get a single license, or if you purchase it and it's bundled with a camera, the license is good for 2 installs. And the same license code, you get a code with it. There's no dongle or anything, it's a code. So you download it, you install it, and then when you open it the first time, you get a license code that you type in, and then you're good to go. So that's kind of the difference between the two as far as the availability. Now, the other thing that's different is with the paid version, you get certain niceties with it. These are additional plugins and additional tools that aren't in the free version, like digital noise reduction, which can be very helpful. If you have some noise in the picture, it can create a very, very clean image without impacting the sharpness of the image. There are also AI tools, which are using what's called the neural engine, that uses artificial intelligence to help you do tasks like rotoscoping and certain other functions that are really handy, as well as being able to export a timeline, not only in, say, an HD format or a 4K format, but be able to repurpose that same timeline and reframe the image to go out to Instagram that has a different aspect ratio, and other online services that have, or if you want it to be a vertical video, you can re-export it and it will reframe it in that format. So let's go ahead and we'll go to the download page. So I guess I'll just pick one, it doesn't matter. So you click that, you go to the download page, and you just have to put in your details. So you fill all of this out, and then once you get it filled out, you just go down and click register and download, and it will create a download zip file, and then you can select where to store that on the computer in the downloads folder or wherever you download to. And then once that's downloaded, you just double click on it and follow the instructions, and it will install it on your computer. Now on the Windows version, when you do the install, it may stop at a certain point and ask to install certain other functions, like I think it has some certain C++ additional features that it needs to download and install in order to work properly. So go ahead and check those if they're not already checked, and then click continue, so it can continue with the installation. I don't think that happens with the Mac version, and I don't have a Linux machine, so I'm not sure how the Linux machine works with it. But I know on the Windows version, it will ask to install additional components. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and we'll launch Davinci Resolve. So you've downloaded it and you're going to launch it for the first time. Now, surprise, surprise, this morning when I went to launch Davinci Resolve, I got a notice that there was an update for it. So the version that we're using for the class tonight is version 17.1. And the new version that just released this morning is version 17.2, which has a few additional features that I'll point out. And the one thing that's really nice about it is it loads really, really fast. On my PC, normally it takes about 40 seconds to load, and I downloaded and installed it on my PC at home, and it loaded in 13 seconds. So that's a huge time saver if you are used to waiting around for it to load. Okay, so this is loaded. The first thing you see when it loads for the first time is you see a projects folder, and you see databases. And databases are where all the projects live. So when you install Davinci Resolve, it will install a database locally on your computer. And you may have the option of installing a database elsewhere, but it's always a good idea to have your main database on a drive that is always accessible by your computer. So you wouldn't want to install your database on an external drive or some other device that's not normally always connected to your computer. So by default, it loads the database on your system drive, but you can also, if you have another drive, say another SSD installed in your computer that's very fast, you can also choose to install your database or even make another database and save it on that other drive, as long as it's something that the machine has access to all the time. Now you'll
Tony,
see, yes.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
When you say database, if I were to put that in like Final Cut Pro or Adobe Premiere terms, what does that mean? Like,
Okay.
yeah, what is the equivalent in the other systems? I'm curious.
Okay. So in Final Cut, everything is stored within one library project or an event, and projects are stored in events. Events are stored in libraries. So you can think of this as kind of like a master library that holds all of your projects and all of your events. And in Premiere terms, Premiere is more flexible in that you can save a project file basically anywhere you want. And just determine with the browser where you want that project file to go. With this system, all of your timelines, all of your projects are all stored in this database. Now this database can be, you can export it, you can back it up, you can restore it. And it's a good idea if you're going to a new version of the software to be able to back up the local database, then do the install for the new version, like for instance, in Davinci Resolve 18, I would probably want to back up my database prior to doing the update. And then once I've updated it, then restore that local database. There are also options for exporting projects. So once you finish a project, and if you want to share that project with someone else, or you want to keep an external version of that same project, there are ways to export that, and it's treated like, say, a project from Premiere, or you can put it in any other folder. Okay, so this little gadget here is a sidebar, open and close. So normally when you come up, this screen may be open, or it may have the local databases. If you don't want to mess around with your database stuff, you can just close that and just have access to your projects. Also, this drag bar can enlarge or shrink the size of your projects, just like picture icons. You can also display them as a list with metadata. And also, if you increase the size enough when you have a project that's open, it will also show some more information with that. So to get started, you can either double click on this untitled project and it will open, or you can select new project and then title that. So what we'll do is we'll do that. So I will call this Davinci class day 1. Okay, so I'm going to create that and it will open it. Okay, so here's our interface. It defaults usually to the cut page. There are 7 pages in Davinci Resolve, and each one has a specific task. First off is your media pool. This is where you can import all of your media and arrange it and organize it to prepare it for the editing process. And we'll go over each of these in more depth, but right now I'm just going to give you an overview. Okay, this page is the cut page, and there are 2 ways to edit in Davinci Resolve, which is kind of unique. There is an edit page, which is this one, and this one has conventional timelines very much like Premiere Pro. And this one, the cut page, is a faster way to edit if you're just doing a lot of cutting and trimming and having to quickly move through footage. It can be very, very handy. And they can also be used together to work on projects. And we'll be explaining how each of these work throughout the next 2 days. Okay, The next page is called Fusion, and Fusion is like basically After Effects for Davinci Resolve. So we won't really be spending any time in here. I'll probably show quickly what it works like, but this is basically like After Effects for Davinci Resolve. And so this would require a lot of instruction and a very deep dive to work in this. So this will not be really part of our basic training. Okay, the next page is the color page. And this is my favorite part of Davinci Resolve. This is where all the magic happens. And so this is where you can color correct, color grade, and do all sorts of really amazing things to your images once they're in. Okay, the next page is the Fairlight page, which is where you do your audio editing. And there's not a lot to see here yet because I haven't imported any clips. So this page will look, all these pages will look a little different once we get going. And your final one is your Deliver page, where you export your material as finished movies. So, okay, let's go back to our first page, the media pool. And there are a number of ways you can bring footage into Davinci Resolve. You can go up to File and Import and Media, and that will take you to a browser. And so I have my own folder here called Davinci Resolve Training, and the folder's organized a particular way. And so I'd like to take a moment before we really get involved with importing footage to show a method of organization that a lot of professionals use in one form or another. This is also what we've used here at MetroEast for quite some time, and I use it for my own projects. It's a really great way to work. So I'll open that up. And so, okay, let me go to this next page. Okay, so organizing your media. The folder structure that helps you organize your media would have a master folder, and the master folder would have a project name. So if you wanted to, if I wanted to call this Davinci Resolve class, that would be the name of my main folder. And then within that main folder, there would be 5 subfolders. And so I'd have my main folder name here. First folder would be your footage, and that contains everything that you've shot with your camera. It contains A-roll, which would be like interview footage if you're doing in an interview program, or master scenes and 2 shots and moving shots, and if you're doing a dramatic piece. B-roll is used to illustrate whatever is being talked about with the A-roll. Like if you have a person being interviewed, that would be on your A-roll, and what they're talking about would be your B-roll. So if you want to, if the person you're talking about was talking about their car and their classic car and describing it, then the B-roll would be the shots of the classic car being shown, what they're describing, okay? The audio folder contains all the audio components of your project. So that would contain any music or sound effects or Foley. And what Foley is, those are sounds quite often, mostly what people make when they move. So the jingle of car keys, footsteps, possibly even breathing, things that are kind of outside the sound effects category that are more personal toward the way people move, or for instance, animal sounds like hoofs from horses, something like that. Okay. Third folder is graphics, and the graphics folder contains all your still material, mostly. So it would contain photos that you would use in your program, any custom titles that you've created, like in Photoshop, any artwork that you use, and also any animations like motion graphics or anything like that. If you have finished versions of those that you want to bring in, those can be in your graphics folder. Folder number 4 is your projects folder. And when I mentioned earlier, you can export your Davinci Resolve projects as a file. That file can go in this folder. And this folder can also have other subfolders that contain things like scripts and documents and releases if you need to get permission to photograph or video record someone, then the releases and all the documents that go into creating the project can go in this folder as well, in addition to the editing project file. Deliverables is the 5th folder, and this is all of your final exports in whatever format you need those to be in. So if you're delivering media to a client and the client wants a master program, you would have that say as a ProRes or an MXF file or a DXHR file if you're doing an Avid type format. As well as YouTube formats like an MP4 file or H.264 or H.265. Those would all be created and those would render and be placed in the deliverables folder. So your entire project from start to finish can be contained in the one folder, and it's easy to organize it with your footage, your audio, your graphics, your projects, and your deliverables.
Tony, I have a quick question.
Sure.
I can't remember the first break or what was that at?
At 7, so I think we're right about there.
Okay,
so
cool.
This is a good time just before we get started on importing footage.
Any questions from people?
Yeah, I guess I have a question.
Okay.
When you save to your database,
Yes.
are you saving both your project edit file there and all your raw materials?
No. All it does is it saves the project file itself. All your original media is still contained within your project folders.
And so could those be on an external drive?
Yes, they can.
Gotcha.
Yeah, the only thing that you don't want on an external drive is your database. So when you download and install the program, it will install the database by default in a local drive, your system drive or another local drive that you designate for it.
Mm-hmm.
But all of your media files are wherever you have them. So if they're on an external drive or other drives contained within your computer, if you're using a desktop, then basically what it does is it links to those files rather than importing them. So it's when you import them, it creates a link to those external files.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, shall we take 5?
Yeah. Oh, sorry. I have a quick question.
Okay,
real quick.
sure. Yeah.
So I download the DaVinci on my own computer.
Okay.
Should I use like my own media or like get media from somewhere? I guess maybe you already explained that.
Okay, so you're asking whether or not you
For today's class, like should I use like my own video or like
well, you can follow along because this will be recorded, so you can also review it later.
Mhm.
And so if you don't have your own media to work with, you can either shoot media yourself if you have your own camera, or there might be sites that you can go to that have media available that you can download for free and be able to use that.
Gina, it sounds like don't you already have some stuff on your computer?
I have some small stuff. Yeah.
I think if you're okay with it, Tony, I think like anything will do at this moment, right?
Yeah.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm just
And
wondering.
the footage I'm using for tonight is footage that may be already loaded onto the laptops. If you've checked out a laptop from MetroEast, that might already be there. So you can look and see. I think it would be, is that in the movies folder, Seth? I think it's.
Yeah, I think it's in the movies folder. Did anybody have a laptop from MetroEast? Why don't we just clarify that before we so Gina doesn't, we've confirmed that. Robin or Miriam, do either of you have a laptop from MetroEast, or Angie?
I
No.
do. Oh, I'm sorry, but I'm using my own because it will be easier.
Okay. Robin?
No, I'm not using a MetroEast laptop.
Okay, you're mavericking then. Okay. I think that's okay. We'll just, Tony will have what he has to show. And then if you have any like footage to dink around with, just use
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Okay, any other questions? Okay, then let's go ahead and take a break. So it's 7:05 now. Why don't we come back at 7:10?
All right. Thanks,
All right.
Tony.
Okay. All right. Okay, are we all back? Okay. I'll go ahead and
I'm back. I'm back here.
okay,
Everybody else?
I think so. Okay, so I'm back here on the media page, which is the media pool. That's the very first tab, if you can see that down at the bottom. And this is where you can bring in all of your media files. So you can bring these in a number of ways. You can use your browser or your Finder to bring them in. You can use your mouse and right click. This is also something I want to bring up. This is important. Davinci Resolve, to use it effectively, you need to have a 3-button mouse. So if you can see this one, I have this, this is just a little Logitech 3-button mouse with a scroll wheel. And if you're on a Macintosh and you've got, it's a single thing where you click it or you hit the control button, you might be limited in what you can do with Davinci Resolve. These aren't expensive. I think this one was maybe $16. It's a little Bluetooth mouse. And it's really handy, but there are certain functions in Davinci Resolve that make use of a 3-button mouse. So it's a good idea to have one of these for navigating the environment and making full use of the application. So let's bring some clips in. So like I said before, you can use the browser to bring them in. And you can use the right click on your mouse. So you can right click and go to import media and bring it in. And you can also use, by opening up the little sidebar here, you can create a pathway to bring in footage. So if I right click in here, I can add new location, and I can type in a location that Davinci will have available to where it's kind of a shortcut to gaining access to footage. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and just right click and bring in some footage. So I'll go down to import media. You can also, the other way is you can use a hotkey. So on a PC, it would be Control-I, and on a Macintosh, it would be Command-I. So you can click that, and it will also bring up a footage requester. So anyway, let's go ahead and bring some stuff in. So I have my Davinci Resolve training folder here, and I'm going to go to the footage, and I'm going to select some waterfalls. So there's some nice waterfall footage in here. So I'm just going to grab all of these and drag them in. And so it looks at the frame rates. It reads the metadata. It looks at the frame rate of your clips. And since I'm using all these clips, it asked me if I want to change the timeline to match the frame rate of the clips. And I don't want to change the frame rate of the clips, so I'll go ahead and click yes. And so I'll change that. Okay. And now we have footage in. If I need more space, then I can create more space. There are different ways to see your footage. Right now, this is the thumbnail view. You also have in this little gadget to the right, this is the thumbnail here. You can also enlarge or shrink your thumbnails with a slider. You have metadata that you can read that has the thumbnail. It also has information about the clip, like the date when it was shot, where it is in the time code. So you can see they all have different time codes, and that can be some important information. You can also click on any of these and go to an inspector, and the inspector will show, also have some information, or actually the metadata will have information about that particular clip, and that's shown down here. The inspector is how you can manipulate that clip. So, okay, so there's those two ways, and there's also a list view. So it'll have the clip name, and then it has the starting and ending time code, the duration. So each one has its own unique advantages. This one has the most information displayed, but the other ones visually are much easier to find your footage. Now, if you are dealing with a lot of footage and you have a lot of material, like you're bringing in audio, like for instance, if I want to bring in an audio clip, I can import media. I'll go back to my audio folder. So I'm going up to the root name of the folder, and then I click on audio, and I have a music file here. So I'll bring that in and add that. And you can see that if you're dealing with a lot of material, it can fill up really fast. So there are ways to organize that, and that's in the use of bins. And so you can create a new bin, and which is just a nice way of organizing your footage. So if I wanted to put all this waterfall footage in a bin, I could just type in waterfalls and create that folder, and then I can highlight these clips and just drag these into that folder. And now I've got a lot more space. Because I'm organized, I can bring in a lot more footage and organize that into other folders. Okay, there's also
Tony, I have a
yes.
quick question. I'm
Yeah.
trying to import an entire folder, but it looks like I'm only able to import like one file at a time. Am I?
Ideally, you should be able to do that. So if you click and you go to import bin,
Okay.
I think, let's see, let's try it. So I'll go to desktop and training, and let's see, I'll try a different one. I'll go to basic editing and footage and just see here if I can load that. Okay, now for some reason it wasn't loading. I have been able to do that before. You can also you should be able to drag things in. So if we go to the inspector.
Yeah, I tried to shift select stuff too, and it's
Okay.
no love. So I just wanted.
Okay, so let me try this.
So how about if you just select multiple clips? Can you bring them in that way?
Yeah, I tried to do multi-select and it didn't.
No?
Okay, I was able to drag that in. It drug it in from the folder. Yeah, I know I've brought in whole folders before, so I'm not quite sure why that's not working properly, because you have the option of importing bins or creating bins in the media folder.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'll look at that, and maybe we can bring that up tomorrow. Again, we'll revisit that.
Cool beans.
Okay, so we have our footage that we brought in, and anytime that you need to go back and revisit your projects, these two icons at the bottom are important. So this little home here will bring up your project page. So if you need to go back for any reason, like if you want to rename your project or something like that, you can go back here, create a new project, and you can have access to that just by clicking the little home button.
Wouldn't you have problems with your project if you'd already done editing on it and then you renamed it? As far as everything linking back to it?
If you have that one open, yes. This little gadget, it looks like a little gear wheel. This goes into your timeline settings and your master settings for your project. So right now, our timeline is set to 1920 by 1080. And we can go to any of the older SD formats or anything up to now in the free version, which is what I have loaded on here now. The highest resolution you're allowed is Ultra HD, which is just below 4K. 4K would be 4192, I believe, by or 4096 by 2160. This is Ultra HD, which is double the resolution of HD. So this is a limitation in the free version. In the paid version, you'd be able to go up, I believe, to at least 8K or beyond with that. But right now, we're just going to stay here. You have other functions like image scaling and color management. We'll be getting into this later on. And then you have other options. And let's go back to color management for a moment. One thing that's good to click on here is right down here at the bottom, this make broadcast safe. So if you're dealing with something that has a lot of saturated colors or a lot of highlights, you can put a limiter on those so they don't exceed broadcast standards. Also, one thing I found and been told by professional colorists is that this 3D lookup table interpolation, and that's something we'll get into later on. It's called LUTs, lookup tables. It has different types of interpolation. That tetrahedral yields the best results overall. I don't know exactly what that does, what the difference is. It's probably kind of like a scaling algorithm that makes things smoother or more accurate. But I've been told that tetrahedral is the best of those. So if you're setting up your project, you could click make broadcast saved and also have tetrahedral selected. Okay, so let's go ahead and just save this. We're back in our media pool. We want to get editing. So let's go ahead and move on to our edit page. Now, this is our edit page, and you have access to your media pool, so you can bring clips in. So you have the same clips that you have here in your media pool. You have an effects library of a number of different effects that we'll get into, an edit index, which I don't really use a whole lot. It's basically like an edit decision list, and then a sound library. Now, the sound library is interesting because in addition to have a free version of the software that you can download, you can also download a free sound library to go with it. You just click on the download button and it takes you to a web page, and you just register and put in your information. You click next, put in a little more information to accept the terms and agreement, and you can download your own sound library that has some Foley effects and some other sound effects that you can use in your projects, which is really awesome.
Tony, we have a question.
Sure.
How do you check the frame rate of the project?
Okay, so the frame rate of the project is with this gadget right down here. And let me close the sound library here. Okay, so the frame rate is in your master settings. And what it did is it took on the frame rate of the footage that I imported first. And that was most of that footage was at 23,976. And so this is where you can go in and change that if you need to. Now, quite often when you actually create a timeline, I haven't created a timeline yet. So this could be changed if you wanted to. Once a timeline's been created, you cannot go in and change that. It will gray this out because a timeline really needs to be at one particular fixed frame rate. So once I've created a timeline, this option is no longer available. But if I wanted to change this, say to 24 or 2997, then it would change the timeline frame rate that I'm about to create to that, and then it would have to interpolate all the footage to match that new frame rate. So I'm just gonna, right now I'm just gonna leave this here, and then I don't think I've made any changes, but I'll go ahead and save it. Does that answer your question?
Gina?
Yep, I got it.
Okay. All right, so we're back. We'll open our media pool by clicking this, and let's go ahead and bring in some footage. So I'm going to double click this, and I can either select all the clips or one clip. So I'm going to just select the first clip, and I'm going to you can either drag it down into the timeline, or you can, so let's see, I'll show you. So you can drag it into the timeline and it puts the first clip in. It's a very short clip. Another thing you can do, and I'm hitting, to clear this, I'm hitting Command Z, which is undo. On the PC, it's Control Z. You can also click on this with your right mouse button and select Create New Timeline using selected clips. So you can do that. It will actually open up a timeline requester. So you can name the timeline. So if I want to call this one Waterfalls, that's an original name, considering all my footage in folder I've called that. Okay, and it has, as by default, it has a number of video tracks and a number of audio tracks. And audio track type is based on selected media. So whatever the audio track format is on that, it will have it on here. I'll click Create. Now it brought it in the same way, only now my timeline has a name called Waterfalls. So we can bring in other clips, and those can be brought in by either dragging and dropping like this, or you can double click on that and view it. You can scrub through it with the viewer. You can play it through. You can play it reverse. You can go to back to the beginning or to the tail or anywhere in between. You can do that. You can also create in and out points. So you can mark your in point if you want it to be there, and go through and say, I want this many seconds, mark your out point. And then you can grab this and drag it down into your timeline. Okay. And so there are a number of ways to do that. When we go back to show our cut page, there are even some other interesting ways of bringing footage into a timeline that I think you'll find very interesting. So let's go ahead and bring some more clips in. You can also grab these and it will drag all of them down. And well, it should do that. Hold on. I don't know why. Make a liar out of me. All right. What's going on? Okay. So I need to drop them in one at, okay, it's telling me I have to drop them in one at a time. Okay. So one thing you can do, if you're on a PC, you can click on a clip, and you can, if you're on a PC, you hit F12 and it will append it to the end of the timeline. So if I do that, it will drop it in, and then I can click another one and drop it in. Any keyboard that has an F12 key, if you don't, you can create a keyboard shortcut that can do the same thing. So I can select this here and drop it in, click another one, append. You can also click on a clip, and you have different ways of dropping it into the timeline. This is insert clip. So if I have my playhead here and I wanted to insert that clip, it would split the clip that's down there and insert this in between. Or I can take that same clip and I can overwrite it. So if I'm here and I click that, it will overwrite it from the point that the playhead is at on the clip. I can replace the clip. So if I'm here, it will replace it with this other clip. And so there's a number of different ways that you can do that. So again, you can bring that in. Yeah.
If you don't start by naming your timeline, you start by dragging a piece of footage in, is it going to name your timeline the name of the footage?
No, no, it would just be like timeline 1 or timeline 2.
And then how do you actually change it to name it what you want to name it?
Okay, so that in that case, you would go back to your media page and you would find your timeline. So the timeline would be here. Now, they all look very similar, and what distinguishes the timeline is this one has a little red corner with a checkbox on it. It also has these little symbols. And so this is waterfall. So if I wanted to change the name of it, I think I just double click on it, or hold on a sec. Let me go back here. Is it properties? Let's see. I know that I've done that any number of times. It always, yeah, let's see, timelines. Anyway, we'll come back to that. There is a way to rename it, and I should be able to just show you because I do that quite often. Also, you can set up smart folders where you can isolate your timelines from the rest of your footage. And just on that note, let's go up to Davinci Resolve, and we will go to preferences, and I'll show you some preferences that you can set up. So like a lot of programs, you have different kinds of preferences. You can set up your memory and GPU usage, how much memory is allocated to it, your media storage, some of the pathways that I already showed you, you can add or remove those here. Things like decode options. This is all really technical stuff. A lot of this I don't even mess with. I just leave this as it is. Here, the internet accounts, if you have an existing YouTube account or a Vimeo account or a Twitter account, then you can add those accounts in, because it's possible to publish directly from Davinci Resolve to those accounts, okay? Over here on the user side, on project save and load, when the current version of Davinci Resolve that is on the laptops that I'm using here, if you want to save a project, you have to actually click save or hit Control S or Command S. But it's possible to have live save initiated. So if I wanted to, I could click live save and also project backups, and it would save at regular intervals. So if I wanted to back up my project and do a live save, I can have it do that every 10 minutes, hourly backups for 2 hours, and daily backups for the past 2 days. And then I can designate where I want those backups to be. So that's something that can be done. And otherwise, you just go through and you save your project. Like I can hit Command Save, and it saves it. Okay, so where were we? Okay, back on timelines. So putting the footage in our timelines, and I'm going to close the media pool, and I'm going to show you some options in your edit page. So this is the playhead, and you can scroll it back and forth. All the controls that I'm going to turn the audio down. So this is for the speaker output. This isn't the actual audio for the timeline. But you can scrub with this. You can also use keys. If you're familiar with the JKL keys, the J key will play backwards in real time. The K key will stop, and the L key will play forward in real time. And then you can stop it again with the K key. Also, your space bar can start and stop. And when you're selecting footage, if I went back up to the media pool and went to a particular shot, like if I wanted to use this shot and put it in, I could go through, and instead of selecting these keys, I could hit my I key for an endpoint and then scrub through and hit my O key for an out point. And then once that's done, I can add that clip to my timeline.
Tony, is there anything sort of the equivalent, you know, in Final Cut, you can favorite sections, or I think in Adobe, you can highlight particular sections. Is there anything similar like that?
Yeah, that's setting up smart bins. And so let's see, I think that's in here. Let's see, smart bins, yes. So you can go to smart bins, and I have one that I've already selected to create a smart bin for timeline. So if I need to find a timeline, like when I went back to find the timeline, I had to look around to find that little one that had the corner in it. You can have a smart bin for different things. So you can have one that's designated for people and another one for shot metadata. So if you have a certain metadata that you've put in that, like for a location, it would create a bin for that particular location, and any shots that had that location description in there would load into that particular smart bin. So yes, you can do that, and it will create bins for those different clips. Another thing that's nice is when you use a clip and it's in the timeline, it shows up with a red line through it. This one just has a portion of it on there through this section. There's an in and out point. But these entire clips are used in the timeline. So it makes it handy to know what you've already used from your media pool. Okay. So you have some clips loaded in, and you can scrub through, and you can find different parts of them.
Is it on video? It's, oh, is it recording right?
Okay. So we've spent some time in the edit page, and so I want to point out some of the other things you can do in this. You can select how you want to view your timeline. You have view options. Quite often I let these stay at the default settings. So whatever is defaulted here is what I use. Sometimes I'll use a stack timeline where it creates an option. If you have more than one timeline, then you can have it tabbed up here. And we'll get into that later on because there are some advantages to having those that I can show you later on. Okay, you can have different views. So you can have just the name view on the clip. You can have a head and tail thumbnail for each clip. My favorite is like a film strip. And that's the one I like to have that shows like little frames throughout of the different clips. It's almost like having the thumbnails stretch all the way across your clip. So it's very easy to identify them. You also have other ways of showing your audio waveforms and your track heights that can be increased or decreased with the video height. You can also increase or decrease your audio waveform, and you can display it differently as well. So I prefer, again, just to leave it pretty much at the default setting. And but you're free to customize this in a number of ways. So if you need more real estate, if you have a number of tracks stacked up, then you can shrink the size of your clips in here in the visibility. But it can be very handy too for editing to be able to increase the size of them. Okay. The other thing is you also have a jog shuttle. So you can jog through just by grabbing that. It's like if you remember the controllers, the edit controllers that had the jog shuttle wheel. This is very similar to that. Okay. And also clips can be linked. So if you want to move clips together, like if I want to go here and I want to move this clip, it's separate from the soundtrack. So if I want to, I can link these clips by either linking them and selecting link clips like this, or I can turn on linking this way. So if I grab these, they can move together and stay in sync. Also, snapping is this arrow, this little magnet icon here. So if I am bringing a clip in and I want to make sure there's no gap, it will snap into the other clip so there won't be a gap. Also, you can snap to the playhead. So if you want to put a clip in a particular place, it will snap to that playhead. And I usually just leave that on by default. You can also add flags and markers for certain things, and we'll get into that later on. That can be very handy. Also, your timeline view, you have several different views. You have your entire timeline view. By clicking this, you can go and see your entire timeline. Also, if you are zoomed in, like I can zoom in here, I have 2 different levels of zoom. This one goes closer. This one is variable, so I can go in way far away, or I can drag this and go in really far. But if I don't want to have to click here or click here, and I want to go here, I can use Shift Z, and that's on every platform. Shift Z will also toggle back and forth between a close-up view, a zoomed in view, and the entire timeline. So that's a very handy thing to have. Okay. Up here, we have the audio mixer. This toggles the audio mixer on and off. I usually just leave that turned on so I can always see my audio levels. So it's reading each track plus the master track. So right now it looks like I have 2 channels in audio 1, and then my master track, which is called bus. Okay, metadata. I can click that and it will give details of whichever clip was the last one that I selected. And it'll give all the details on that. Inspector is if I select a shot and say I wanted to zoom in or out with it, then I would use the inspector, and I can control the zoom and the positioning in the frame, the rotation angle, and all that can be handled with these controls. You also have controls for cropping, compositing, speed ramping, stabilization. So if it's shaky, you can stabilize it, and some other options. And if you want these to be reset, you just click on them and they will reset the angle back to default again. Okay. And so you'll end up probably using Inspector quite a bit because it can be very handy when you're going through your footage and want to modify a shot. Okay. So
Tony, I
now
have a quick
audio,
question about
yes.
the next break, and I also have a question about
Okay.
the bin. So when is our next break? At 7?
I think it was at 7:30 roughly, but we went a little over, so we can take a break now.
Is that okay?
Yeah, that's just fine. And this could be a 10-minute break.
Okay. So I have a question about, I'm in here. Do you mind if I do a screen share?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, give me a second here. So can you see my screen okay?
I can.
So I'm in the media pool that sort of shows up alongside the edit window, and
Yes.
I'm trying to I like this icon view or whatever,
Yes.
but I keep pressing this button. It just increases the size of the icons.
Mhm.
Is there a way to not make? Can I shrink it back down?
That should be a slider. You should be able to slide it to the left, and it'll shrink them back down again.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Okay. And also, if you look to your left, you'll see that sidebar that's open that says waterfalls.
Yep.
If you need more space, you can click that little gadget, go in the upper left-hand corner where it's got that sidebar gadget that's just above
Oh,
master.
gotcha. Oh, and
Click
then
that, and that will give you even more space to view your media
juicy.
pool.
And then I can adjust this bad boy right here.
You can,
Okay.
yes.
Sweet. Awesome. Are people okay with like a 5-minute break?
We can do 5. That's fine.
5. Give me 5.
That sounds good.
Okay. Sweet. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess we'll come back about 7:50 then. Okay, as soon as we're all back, I'll continue on.
Present.
Okay, so to start off with, Angie had a question about renaming the timeline, and if I hadn't been so heavy-handed, literally, I would have been able to show her right then and there. So I'm back on the media page, and all you have to do to rename a timeline is you very carefully hold your mouse pointer over the name, and you click it, and it will highlight it, and then you can go back and you can rename it. And it's that easy.
Where's your mouse?
Okay, can you see the mouse? Can you see it? It's got the red circle around it.
Okay, now that I moved our pictures, our images, I can see
Okay.
it.
There's a little shrink gadget at the top of the images that you can just, it's like a little dash line. You can shrink the images down to something that doesn't take up so much real estate. So yeah, so all I did was I took my mouse and I just lightly touched it before I was double clicking, and you just lightly touch it, and then you can go back in and type in your new name. So I'll go back to Waterfalls the way it was, and hit return, and now it's renamed that timeline.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so let's go back to the edit page. And let's go through and look at a few other options in it. So in addition to the media pool, we've looked at the media pool. Let's look at the effects library. And the effects library has all of your, it has a toolbox with things like video transitions, such as cross dissolves and added dissolves and blurs. And these can all be previewed, which is really nice, just by dragging your mouse over it. Now, if I have this position between the two clips, I can just, like on the cross dissolve, I can preview what it looks like before I apply it. And if I want the blur dissolve, I can again see what that's going to play like before I apply it to the transition. And these can be applied basically like if I want the blur dissolve, just by bringing it down and dragging it onto the timeline. And I'll need to probably zoom in to see that better. Yeah, let's see, did I do that? Yep, come on. I don't know why it's,
I'll just press.
okay. Okay, it applied it on there. There's a way to center on edit. Come on. Oh, I see what I did. All right, that's my mistake. Okay, the reason it didn't work is because I needed to use my trim controls, and I needed to create some space, a handle on either side for it to be applied. So this would be a good opportunity for me to show you how the trim controls work. It's been a long day. Okay, so by hovering over the end of your clip, you can activate a trim control. And so on this clip, I can bring that and I can drag that back. Oh, and I want to link my clips. So I'm going to link my clips. I can drag that back. All right. Let's see here. All right. So I can drag these back. And I'm going to go maybe a second back, and I'm going to drag this one back about the same amount. Now, if I don't want this gap here, all I have to do to delete the gap or to fill the gap is to left click with my mouse and then right click and do a ripple delete function. And that will fill that gap. Now, if I grab this and I drag it down, you can see that it actually applies the transition.
Tony, can you do that ripple delete? Is there like a ripple delete tool that you can, rather than having to do that extra step of deleting the in between?
You know, I think there is. I don't know if I've ever used it because this is kind of a holdover from Adobe Premiere, where I would just go ahead and do a ripple delete. I think when I bring this up, it looks like, I think it's just the delete key. So if I hit the delete key, yeah, the delete key is the ripple
But
delete.
you know what I mean? Like, so there's a ripple delete where I think it's like in Premiere, it's like you press R twice or something like that. And instead of
Yeah,
having to
okay.
create that gap, it just like trims it. Does that
Yeah,
make
so
sense?
let's,
Would it be like a closed gap?
yeah, I mean, when I edit, I'll usually just do this and just click the ripple delete. But that's a good point. Yeah, I'll look that up and see, because I know that there is one. In fact, let's see. We'll go to trim. So they have a ripple one there. I think there is one that I remember seeing. I'm lazy that way though, so I don't necessarily learn all the keyboard shortcuts to things, because my style of editing, I just am more of a click and drag person. So, but I'll look that up and see if I can find it. I know that if you hit the delete key, it will do that. And with myself, I just right click with the mouse and it does the same thing. But I can look that up and check to see what that is. All right. So to cut a piece, you have a blade, you have your razor blade, and you can either click that and then bring it down and cut it in the path here, and then delete your clip out if you want. And then I'll do my lazy way of ripple deleting. You can also, let's see, I'll go back here. Okay, you can also use the either Control B on the PC or Command B and perform a cut, which is one of the keyboard shortcuts that I do learn, that gets you in that really fast. So Command B, Command B. So you can go through and slice things up how you want. Oh, there, we're back to that ripple delete again. Okay. So again, transitions, if you are hovering over a spot, you can preview that, which is really handy. I really love that about Davinci. I don't know if other programs do that now, but that's one thing I really enjoyed about this one, is that it allows you to preview the different kinds of transitions. But then with me, the lazy editor, I also have to make sure that I provide handles on either side. So I have to trim the clips back in order to do like a dissolve or some other effect over each end, because if I go to drop it on and there's no handle there, or a place trimmed back from the edge of the clip, it won't drop on the transition. So you also have audio transitions that are crossfades, and that can be a 0 dB crossfade, or it will dip or increase on the crossfade. You have also you have titles, a lot of different titles that you can apply, very simple titles. And you can also preview these as well. So if there's any movement, some of them have movement, some of them don't. You can do very basic titles. You can also do fusion titles. And again, these are all previewable.
Tony, in the transitions,
Yes.
I was looking at the dip to color dissolve.
Yeah.
And to me, let's say I want to do something funky like dip to red. Do you know how you adjust? Right now, I think it dips to black. Do you know how
Okay.
to adjust those sort of that component? of
Let's
it?
see. The dip to color dissolve. So let's see, is this the same one? Okay. So I think if if I click on it, there is a color here. So by clicking on it, it opens up like the inspector tab. And if I click
Oh, I
on that
see.
color, then I can
do like green. Okay.
you can create a color. And if you want it to be red, then it will dip to
That's
red
that. Just let her.
like that.
That's that. Just let her.
So basically you apply that effect, you click on it, it opens up the inspector window, you just find your color one, you open it, you select the color you want, click OK, and then it applies it to the effect.
Sweet.
Okay, so generators. There are a number of generators. If you're doing any kind of test patterns or anything, sometimes I use generators for things. You have different types of color bars. You have nice gradients that you can apply. So if I wanted a gradient in my timeline, we can bring that down. Now, sometimes, I don't know if why it does it sometimes and other times it doesn't, but sometimes I will drop something in the timeline from the generators and it doesn't show up right away as a clip. And if you bring it down and you drop it in the timeline, and now this one's showing up, but a few times I've done that and they didn't show. So what I did was I would right click on the clip and select create new compound clip. And then I would just call it like for color, if I can learn to type, gradient, and create. And then there, now it shows up where it's got the icons on it, the little thumbnails. So anytime that you bring something down and it doesn't show up and it just looks like this from the generators, just right click on it, create new compound clip. I'll just call this one color bars and click create. And now you have an actual clip from that generator. And I'm going to go ahead and just delete those.
Is that 4-color clip? Is that adjustable? Can you change the colors?
Yeah, I think so. So you can select each one of these colors. So if I wanted this one to be something other than red, if I wanted it to be purple, I can click and adjust each one. Okay, done. And then click the other one if I want that one to be blue instead. I can do that. Click OK. This one, if I want that one, and if I'd rather have it be red, or let's see, let's make it green. Click OK. This one, if I want that one to be another green or something in between, let's make something really ugly here. Click OK. So now I've got my basis for it, and I just click on it and click create compound clip and have that be, again, 4-color gradient or whatever you want to call it, really. And click create, and now you've got your custom gradient.
Okay.
All right. Go ahead and get rid of that. It's going to undo everything.
And those controls automatically showed up when you clicked on the clip?
Yes. Yeah. So yeah. So if I bring it down here, just by dropping it on, the controls showed up in order to make that happen. And then you also have transform controls if you wanted to crop it or change the size of it, or whatever you want to do. You have full control over that before you create it as a compound clip. So there. Okay. Effects. Now in the free version of Davinci Resolve, some effects are usable and other ones are not. And it will let you know if you happen to stumble on an effect that is not usable. So let me go back let's see here. Go back to the effects. Go back into my timeline. And like if I wanted to drop a binocular effect on here, I can do that. Just drop that effect on, and now I've got a binocular effect on that. Okay. Also, oh, here's one, the CCTV. So it comes up with a little window here. You have reached a limitation with Davinci Resolve. Again, there's the free version and the paid version. So by touching on that, these are, I think the appearance is pretty much the same. They might be more grayed out than the other ones. And if you're not ready to buy it, then it'll say, you know, it'll give you the option of buying it or not. But a lot of these, when you touch on them, like the night vision, it looks like you can use. So if I wanted to drop a night vision effect on there, that's kind of cool looking. It will work. But other ones, quite often when I'm just scrubbing on them, it will, like this one, the drone overlay. Again, I've reached the limitation with the free version. So a lot of these clips are usable and other ones are not. And you could go ahead and apply the clip. So if I went to the drone overlay, I could apply it. Let's see, I have to close it here first. And let's see, is it gonna do it? It may not, it might be. Anyway, I've put those on, but it has put a watermark up on it. So it would render the clip out, but it would have this watermark on it that made it basically unusable in the timeline. So this is one of the limitations. I'm just gonna get rid of that. With the paid version over the free version is that some of the effects do not work, and it will let you know when it doesn't. Like right there. Okay. So again, you have filters, and you have a lot of these. Again, a lot of these, some of these are usable and others are not. But what's nice is that you can preview them.
Tony, I'm not sure if you got this question answered. How does the compound clip, what does compound clip do to the clip?
Okay, what compound clip does is it makes it an actual video clip. So when you have a generator, it just generates data, basically, that you can manipulate. But if you want to make it into a video clip, then that's just a step where if you bring it into the timeline, it will just have this pink look and you can scrub it, but I don't think that it actually works as an actual clip. I mean, it might, but I know if you want to see it, like if you want to see it with the thumbnails, then you have to apply the new compound clip to it for it to show up and work pretty much as a regular video clip.
Okay. What Gina was saying is that she noticed that after you change any color, she can't change the color after she generates the compound clip.
Right. Yeah, because you've already done that manipulation to it.
Yeah, it's sort of like once you do it, it's done. You need to do your manipulation before, correct?
Yes. Yes.
So in Final Cut land, a compound clip meant like multiple clips in one that you broke out into a different window to edit. Is that anything similar on this?
You can do that with Davinci too. Yes, you can create a compound clip by selecting multiple clips in a stack and then arranging them as a compound clip. And then later those compound clips can be broken apart. Okay. And viewed.
Robin has a question. Can you import stock titles and effects?
Yes, like if you've created effects in titles in Photoshop. Also, there are packages out there, are third parties that create like fusion titles and other custom packages, templates for Davinci Resolve. Some of those do work with the free versions and other ones are specific to the paid version. So it's important, like if you were to purchase third-party templates to work or packages to work within it, make sure that it says, if you're using the free version, that it says Davinci Resolve and not Davinci Resolve Studio, because otherwise it's limited because it would access features that are not available in the free version.
Tony, can you please show me the icon that you're going to make the composite?
The compound, to make the compound clip?
Compact clip?
Yeah, so
Right.
here, let me back up. So I right click, or I select the clip with my left button, I right click on it, and then I scroll up where it says new compound clip.
Okay. All right.
Yep. And then I just give it a name and then create, and it shows up as an actual clip.
Thank you.
Okay.
So Tony, for those of us who are used to Premiere, is a compound clip in Davinci Resolve the same thing as a nested clip in Premiere?
Pretty much, yes.
Cool, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, it works in a very similar way. So we've gone through and looked at a lot of the different features here. And so let me take you to the cut page, and we can go over the cut page briefly. So what the cut page is, it's like a more streamlined version of the edit page. So the edit page has, and let me close this, has your conventional timeline here. And if I want to see the whole thing, I either have to click this to see the whole thing, or, you know, and use the different magnifiers and always click back to that. On this clip, on the cut page, you have two timelines visible. The timeline down below is always zoomed in to a particular level. And then there's another timeline up above that's the entire timeline. So your entire timeline is always visible, and each one of these breaks is another clip in the overall timeline. And this shows where I am in that. So I can move this through, and right here you can see that there's a transition, and the transition shows up here. And so I can scroll through the entire timeline very quickly to get from one end to the other by using this. And then I can scrub through on this one. Now, there's a couple of different ways to scrub. You can have it to where the playhead is stationary and you're scrubbing the timeline back and forth, or you can have the timeline be stationary and you scrub the playhead back and forth. It's your choice, whichever way you prefer to work. It's completely customizable that way. Now, another thing that is really nice about the cut page, again, this is meant to edit things in a very fast way. So you have ways of viewing clips in the viewer, one clip at a time. So you can go through, you can pick your in and out points, and you can drag it into the timeline. What the cut page option it has, so if I click here in the timeline, then I'm back to timeline viewer. So it's dynamic, however you pick it. But one thing that it has that the other one doesn't have is this middle icon right here. So this one is to view the timeline. This one is to view the clip that you've selected. This one is called source tape. And what source tape does is it allows you, like if I have this entire bin of clips and I don't want to have to go through and pick my in and out points on this one, then go through and scrub through this one and pick my in and out points, and then again for this one and do the same thing. What I can do is I can look at all of the clips that are here by clicking source clip. Now I can now scrub through all of them, and you can see that it changes and follows. Each dividing line is another clip. So it's a very quick way of going through all my footage. And I can also, you know, pick in and out clips on each one of these. So if I decide I want this one and I want to have an endpoint, I can hit the I key and scrub through, and I can hit the O key, and then I can grab that and drag it down and put it on my timeline. And then I can go to another clip and hit my I key, drag it over, find the out point, hit my O key, drag that down, and put that in. It's a very fast way of moving through a lot of footage quickly. And it also shows your clips in proportion to one another. So you can tell that this first clip is a very, very long clip. Clip number 6. And also you can sort these in different ways. So you can sort it by time code, which is the way it is now. You can sort it by the camera, the date, the time, the clip name. So if I wanted to sort it to where it starts with clip number 4, which is the smallest number, it will do that. And it'll arrange it however I choose. And it's a really fast and easy way to drag things down into the timeline and to sort through your footage very quickly. So again, if nothing is selected, I guess this is the first time I've said it. If nothing is selected, everything is selected. So you can scrub through all of that and it will just indicate which of your clips is the current clip that you're viewing. And it's really nice, so you don't have to go through and click each individual clip. I mean, you can if you want a more detailed view, but it's a nice and very fast way of scrubbing through a lot of footage very quickly. And you can even just put it on and watch it if you want, and review your footage that way. So a lot of really powerful features available with the cut page. And so let's, I'm gonna go ahead and just delete these clips. Now the trim tools work a little differently. You have trim tools in the cut page, but if you're used to Final Cut, these allow you to scrub back and forth. So I'm trimming this one, and you can kind of see, if you look, you can see an outline of it trimming into that other clip. And then I can grab this one and I can trim that the other way. And it's a very quick and easy way of trimming. I can also slip and edit back and forth this way by hovering over the timeline. So again, these trim tools work differently than they do in the edit page, but it's a way, if you want to, you can work much faster.
That seems like the ripple delete thing that I was talking about.
Exactly. Yes,
Okay.
It does its own ripple delete automatically when you do that in the cut page. So it works similar to Final Cut in that respect. So the regular edit page here works more like you'd expect to see in Premiere. And if you're more comfortable working in that one, you never have to touch the cut page if you want. But there are advantages to using both. So like, for instance, if I had all this waterfall footage, which I've done before, I've gone out and shot just nothing but stock footage for clients, particular in one in particular, where that was the deliverable, was stock footage. So I would go through and use the cut page, and I would grab all of my footage and I would drag it. I would use the source tape and I'd go through and I'd trim out, like if there was any bumps at the beginning and end, like if I hit the start and stop button on the camera, when it bumped it, I would trim each one of those out and very, very quickly build a timeline of usable B-roll footage, which then I could go in, and if I needed to do any color grading or correction, then I could do that, and it would really move much, much faster than the conventional way of bringing each clip into the edit page and trimming each one of those separately and then deleting the gaps on them. It just made for a much more efficient workflow. So it's really, as an editor, it's up to you how you want to edit. There's no rule that says you have to use the cut page or the edit page or mix both of them. So it's really a nice option to have these different types of pages. And like the source tape is a great feature to have if you have a lot of footage and you want to be able to scrub through it without having to go back and click each and every one of these. It's a fantastic way to get through a lot of footage quickly and to start building your production. So we have all this footage in here, and I see our time is getting down there. So I'll just get our feet wet into, like, if we wanted to go in and trim some of this audio. You can trim it in the edit page here. You can affect it. In fact, let me show. You can grab the tracks and you can stretch them, and you have volume controls, so you can grab a volume control, and the waveform is dynamic. So as you adjust the volume level, the waveform redraws itself instantly. So if this one's really, really loud, these clips are really loud, if I want to bring them down to about the same level as the other ones, I can just grab that and drag it down very quickly and adjust
Tony,
it.
is none of this available in, oh, this is in the edit tab. This isn't in the music tab.
Yeah, this is still in the edit tab. Yeah. Okay. And I just wanted to show that you can do this. You can perform this in the edit tab, as well as the called the Fairlight tab, where you can work your audio on. This brings in just the audio tracks. And again, you can stretch the tracks this way. You can stretch them temporally like this to zoom in. Now this one is regarded as a stereo track. So you can't, if you mute it, it's muting both tracks as opposed to having separate audio channels. And there are ways to break those into separate tracks. So for instance, if I, say if I was in the edit tab, and you can see that audio 1 is it says 2.0, it's a 2-channel track. I can change the track type to a mono track, and then I can, if I want to, I could grab all of these. Well, let's see, I'm going to turn off my linking. I can grab all of these and drag them down. So if I hold down the Alt key and I drag down, it will duplicate those. And now I can take audio 2 and audio 1 and mix them separately. But first I have to do one thing. I have to go into my properties. So let's see. So it's to mono, and then my clip attributes, I would change from mono, so that would be embedded in channel 1. So let's select all of those actually and do that. Clip attributes. So let's change these to mono, embedded channel 1 for track 1, and then do the same thing. I'll go to that, go to clip attributes, change that to a mono track, and then make that embedded channel 2. So now each of these are independently editable, and if I mute one, it will just mute that particular track without affecting the other one. So if I'm playing a track,
that's that, and just let it roll. What's cool is you see there's this little,
you can see there, basically these have the same thing recorded on both tracks, but it allows me to mute them independently.
That up there.
And so that would be handy to be able to edit tracks independently if you're doing an interview and you had 2 people talking and each one was recorded onto a separate track and you needed to edit those independently. Quite often when you drag them in, they would just result in one stereo track. So it's possible when you have them in the timeline to break them apart. Also, when you're in the media pool, if I import a piece of media that, for instance, if I had a clip And I'll set this up. This will be one of the first things we work on tomorrow. I'll just bring in this track, this 2-channel track. These are 2 of our producers here. This is Emily and John, and this is a clip that we'll be working on tomorrow in our color page. So if I wanted to change the audio track type in here, I could just right-click on it and go to Clip Attributes and click to Audio, change this to mono and make that one audio 1, then add a track, make the second channel mono and make that embedded track 2. Since there are 2 channels on here and each one is talking with a microphone, that would mean that when I bring that into the timeline, so if I were to create, say, a new timeline, so if I go to File, New Timeline, Timeline 2, and I would grab those and bring them in, those separate audio tracks are already there and they can be edited independently. So that is really handy and very flexible, because quite often you're dealing with stereo tracks like music tracks, where it doesn't matter. You don't have to edit those separately and they can stay as a stereo track. But in other cases, like if you have 2 independent audio channels and you want to be able to edit those separately, by just dragging them in, it might create a single stereo track where you can see the 2 channels, but you can't address them separately. So you can either break them apart in the timeline, or you can set them up to be separate before you bring them in and drop them in a timeline. And it just makes it easier when you go to edit this audio to be able to address each track separately. So we're at 8:30. Do we want to go ahead and break for this evening, or do we have any questions? I'm fine if we want to stay a few minutes longer.
Sorry, just a quick question. How do you separate the audio file from, yeah.
Okay, so what I already showed?
Yeah, sorry,
Okay.
could you do it again?
Yes, I will. Okay, so you mean from the import page?
From the stereo to mono, how you separate, like let's say 2 interview and edit 2 separate audio
Okay,
separately.
so if I already have it in a timeline and I want to separate the tracks into, okay. So what I'll do is I will go back to my page and I'll find this timeline. I'm going to go ahead and just delete this timeline. So I'm going to remove the timeline, delete, and I will delete this clip. So let's see, I can just actually click delete and delete it. Okay, so I'm going to re-import that clip. So I'm going to right click and I will import the media and I'll bring this in. Okay, and then I'll create a timeline from this clip. So I'll open that timeline, and now I've got the timeline, and it has the one audio channel that has 2, it's listed as a 2.0. So both channels are here, and if I go into, even if I go into my Firelight page, the channels are shown separately, but they're not editable separately. If I click on them, they're always showing, they're always going to affect both channels. So if I want to separate those, I would have to go in and change the types of tracks that they are. So let's see, change track type to mono. And then I want to hold down my Alt key and I want to drag this down to another channel and create another channel. And then this channel is also a mono. So I want to go into the clip attributes and I want this first channel to be a mono channel with embedded channel 1. So it has from the one microphone. And then this one Notice that these are exactly the same. I want to change this to only read the audio from the other microphone. So I'll change that to a mono channel in the clip and tell it to only show embedded channel 2. And now it shows the audio from channel 2. So if I play through these clips,
okay, from the top. Hello, I am Emily Vidal here at
you can
MetroEast
see that Emily is talking here, and then John is talking.
And today
Emily
we're
is
gonna talk
talking.
a little bit with John about our production services department. So John, can you tell me what is production services here?
Production services is running a nonprofit or a government agency.
So you can see that and hear that they're at different levels. And so it's possible now that the tracks are separated, you can go in and edit those and change the volume and manipulate those independently, and then remix those back together, back into a much better sounding audio track. So does that help? Did that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. So when we come, this is a good point to leave off here. So if there are any other questions, please feel free to ask. So when we come back tomorrow, we're going to be working on this clip, and we'll also revisit the waterfalls too, but we'll work on this clip, and we'll not only do some audio editing on it, but we'll learn how to use some of the basic color correction tools and make some color changes in this clip. And we'll also be learning, we'll bring in some with the waterfalls, we'll bring in some music and things like that with that. And then we'll also work on the deliver page. So once a video is finished, how to export it. And then if we have time, we'll come back and do some fun things in the color page, in addition to the basic stuff that we will learn at the beginning of the class tomorrow.
Isn't it
So,
all fun?
sorry, what?
Isn't it all fun though?
Oh, it is all fun. I actually, when I'm working in this program, it's fun for me.